Hey, what's up? In this episode, me and my boy Greg talk about something that most men don't ever talk about, and that is the vulnerability of our mental health. My name is Jonathan, and this is Times with Dad. So, Greg, I want to
Hey,
ask
what's
you,
up?
right? I want to ask you this question. I thought of this question, and I was like, I know you, and I've known you for a while, and I know how I would describe you and all these things, but I was curious, how would you describe yourself
Huh.
as a person?
Super curious, um, insightful, caring, adventurous to some degree. I think I'm a very loving person. I think my wife would agree with that. And giving. I'd say that. I'm a giver. Definitely a giver.
How would you describe yourself as a man?
Same.
Can you say times with dad?
Times dad. So let's get this podcast started.
I was super glad that you sent these topics over
Yeah.
that you mentioned because they were definitely not like 100% like focused as a father. It was focused as like a man and just core beings. And I was like, yes, I want these conversations. I need these conversations. And then I chose the mental health one because it was like not really talked about really ever. I was talking to someone recently who I used to work with, and I remember this. I doubt they remember, right? You know how sometimes you remember something people don't,
Mhm.
and for whatever reason you do and they don't. Uh, I remember he was on his Snapchat one day,
Mhm.
and he was working at his job, and they instituted during COVID, I think, like a mental health
Mhm.
day, like you could take off as like an additional like quota for your
That's good.
PTO. And the person put in, I'm having a mental day. And I recall this person Snapchatting that from like the Slack and was like, I don't know why, but this frustrates me so much.
Mhm.
Right. That same person I talked to a week ago, just so oddly, just reached out to me. I haven't talked to this person in years. And I told him I was gonna have a mental health for men's podcast episode with you. And he's like, I'm so glad you're doing that. Uh it's a topic that's not discussed as
Mhm.
much. And he was like, because I go through mental health stuff. And I didn't know that. Uh, and it was interesting to see the paradigm shift with that
Mhm.
person. It was also interesting to see, I'm not sure how much you follow sports, to be honest, but Amon Shepard
Mhm.
recently, I saw on Instagram. Now, he said this years ago, but I
Mhm.
saw it recently, where he was like, I thought depression was like fake. I thought it was an excuse people would say, right? And he's like, he got injured and he couldn't do anything. And sometimes your value is what you're
Mhm.
good at. And when you get that taken away, you kind of start to question stuff or whatever the
Mhm.
case. Uh, and he said that he started going through depression. And he discovered that like, it's not a fake thing. It's a very serious thing. And something that unless you see it or experience it sometimes, you can have that sentiment of like it's fake,
Mhm.
right? With all of that, that's when I also told you that I found this other podcast and found that through
Mhm.
chance, through social
Mhm.
exploring. Um, the Chris Williamson one I told
Mhm.
you about, and where he was interviewing some dude,
Yeah.
Dwayne, who I've never heard of. And it was a topic that he asked him. He's like, what do you think more women what do you think more women understood from a man? His answer verbatim was there's 1,000 times more going on inside the man's head than you have any idea. He's carrying burdens that you don't have a clue
Mhm.
about, and he doesn't know how to express them, and he doesn't know what to do about it. And he figures if he puts it out there and communicates it, it's just going to be shot down.
Mhm.
He's going to be called a fool, called weak. So he carries it inside, and he has no clue how to handle the burdens and the hell that most men are carrying inside and not even showing you. There are so many things there, right, that he says that I want to go over with
Mhm.
you. But the first thing is, I want to know from your perspective, what aspects do you agree with that comment
Yeah.
that
I
Dwayne
want to
said?
address the first thing that you said earlier in regards to, like, not knowing about depression until you experience it. And
Hmm.
I think that that's a right, that's valid. Like, I think there are a lot of things that happen across the world that we can't associate ourselves with, we can't empathize with in many ways because it's just so foreign to us until it happens to us and it hits us smack dab in the face. That we come to the realization that we may be just as flawed as the next man, right? That it's not just made up in our heads, but it's something that we all may go through at some point in a period of the time. And like so, and then in addressing the comment that was made, um, there are millions. I would say not that there are millions of, if not billions, of thoughts that happen into a man's that go inside of a man's mind on a regular basis. In terms of the things that we're experiencing, I think that growing up, suck it up. I don't care where, culture that you may be from, and I shouldn't really brush paint a broad brushstroke, but I think that many cultures embody this um, kind of toxic masculinity kind of behaviors in terms of raising young boys into men, and
Hmm.
letting them believe that there's something wrong with them if they show any sign of what they believe is weakness, right? And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of strength that comes in vulnerability, right? And being open and honest with yourself in terms of your feelings and how to express yourself. I think that's why we have a lot of relationships that also end because communication wasn't at the grassroots of the relationship. And a lot of that might have been based on the fact that as a child, you weren't even able to communicate how you felt. So how are you supposed to communicate how you feel as a man? Right? And people wonder why there are men with mental health issues and that are walking around trying to figure out their problems and not speaking up around, needing help or wanting it. A lot of that has to do with the burden of um, who came before them as well, right? So if there were men that also didn't have an opportunity to process their own feelings or emotions, they're learning from those men, right? I unfortunately didn't have a father in my life, so I learned from my mom. So they was always communicating. So that's why I think I'm a fairly decent communicator. But the reality is that that didn't make me exempt from societal norms of feeling like, oh, I got to put on, I got to be strong, I got to not show people this or show any side of weakness that may be associated with femininity in any way. And it's unfortunate because I think that in some ways it may help you in terms of surviving the world that we live in, but in the long term it may hurt you because if you spawn children or raise children, I don't want to say spawn them, but if you raise children, they're learning from you, and if you're not correcting some of the learned behavior that you grew up with, those children are going to do the same thing that you did and are going to struggle the same way you did. And there's no reason for that to happen. I'm a big believer, John. I tell you this all the time. Like always, I like to talk to people who are a lot older than me and ask them a ton of questions. And one of the questions I always ask them is, what's one thing you wish you could have done or should have done that you regret never doing? And guess what I do? As soon as they tell me, I go and do it. The reason why is because there's no reason why that I need to make that same mistake or struggle the way they struggled because they already told me the roadmap. They already gave me the game plan. They told me what not to do. So all I have to do is do exactly the opposite or some semblance of that, and I'm gonna be successful. I'm gonna be okay. And I wish that we had more of that mentality as well. But back to mental health, I think yeah, all of the comments that were made in regards to the things that men think about, the things that we go through, the burdens that we carry, the unspoken hurt, right? Undealt with trauma that we deal with or don't deal with. Um, that can manifest into physical health issues, mental health issues, as we're talking about, but a whole lot of other things going on, right? That impact um, not only you as an individual, but your relationship with people and how you also see the world.
Have you ever had any experience with mental health
Oh
challenges?
man, yeah, I think My first experience with it like hit me hard might have been in college. I was an undergrad. I had just transferred um, to an HBCU in Maryland, and there were a lot of people dying around me. And when I say around me, it's just people that I knew like in high school. Also, there were family members passing away, and this was like within months of each other. And so, to me, that was a lot of trauma at one time, and so that's why like people not laugh at me, but they say the bar is very low when I respond this way. When people say to me, "Hey, how's it going?" or "How are you doing today?" and I said, "It's a good day because I'm alive," and they don't understand where that's rooted from. That's rooted from a lot of trauma of me seeing a lot of people pass away in a short span of time and having to go to funerals. That's not a good feeling. You know what I'm saying? And so you look at life a lot differently. So I think that it gave me an appreciation for life a little bit more. And that's why when I do talk to people and I hope to motivate them and or at least give some semblance of happiness, right? Because I choose happiness and I want to make people feel happy when they're with me because man, there's so much sadness going on in this world. And so during that period of time, anyways, I think I struggled with being able to process the thought of death and its infiniteness, right? And not knowing that, shit, I don't know what comes after. I hope that there's a life after this, but I don't know. And processing that all while, you know, being in a new environment, trying to make new friends, also getting good grades, um, and not being a disappointment to my mom because she's a big believer in education. And if you don't got an education, you ain't ish. So, but that period of just people close to me that had passed away, that was hard. That definitely was very hard for me. A time where I definitely cried for a couple of nights every night. Not only for their loss, but just dealing with that. And I'm somebody that doesn't really cry like that off the top, drop of a dime. But when people are passing away, people that are like meaningful to you, that meant something to you, that represent something in your life, that's hard. That's hard, man. That's hard.
Let me ask you this question. You gave that great example, right? Like of mourning
Mhm.
and how that was challenging. What I'm interested to know is, were you aware that was a mental health struggle you was having at that moment, or did you feel it there was more just a sadness due to the mourning?
I think I probably felt that it was a sadness due to the mourning of those individuals. But when I look back at it, I think that when you have mental health issues or struggles or challenges, it's your inability to function on a regular basis, right? The things that you used to do normally that were easy for you, based on that experience that you have, it somewhat cripples you, right? So, like being able to get to class on time, being able to get my homework done. Like when I first got there, I was definitely very studious. And then after all of that stuff started happening, I started slipping a little bit, right? Staying up late a little bit more, not able to like really focus or really wanting to even engage with people. You kind of start to retract yourself from what else is going on in your life because you're just like, I'm just in a moment, I'm in a funk. And I'm the type of person like, I typically get my energy from people, but in that moment, I was like, nah, I got to just sit back and be by myself. But in doing that, right, you cripple yourself from kind of the learning and growth that you could be experiencing. And right, being in college, I'm a sophomore, I'm at a new school, supposed to be turning up, I'm supposed to be going to parties and doing all this stuff. And I'm not. I'm not. I don't want to talk to nobody. I want to just crawl into a corner, man, and drink whatever I had around. And what we call bum juice, it was E&J. That's what we could afford. So that's what I was doing, you know. But then you come out of the funk after having a series of conversations with people and God, and you come out of it eventually. I think it took some time. It wasn't like it happened in a week or two. It probably happened over a quarter of maybe a semester or two, but it was hard. And so I think that that's what differentiated it from being, hey, I'm sad because I'm mourning versus, oh, I can't function. This was, I'm not able to do what I used to do. That's a problem. But you don't realize that until you're kind of a little bit in it, and then, or until you're kind of out of it, if you will. And then you can reflect and look back at it and say, oh, that's what was going on. But you don't know because you're a kid. How old was I? Like 19? I graduated when I was 17. Yeah, entered my freshman year 18. I was 19. when I entered my sophomore year. I'm 19 years old. What the hell do I know about mental health? I'm talking about that.
Well, this also wasn't discussed really ever back then, right? It it was either you're depressed and what are you depressed for, or you're depressed and something's wrong with you, right? And that was just a society view, and there was a third aspect where it was like you're crazy. That was it, right? Like
And
you're
it's
crazy.
dismissive. It's
Uh,
dismissive. And you
yeah.
think about it too, like, listen, I'm first generation born. My mom is from the Caribbean. And the first thing she'd be like, you're sad? Sad about what? Oh, you can eat? You have roof over your head? You have clothes on your back? You're fine. There's nothing wrong with you. And so to me, it's unfortunate because that can be, you know, it can be very dismissive and it feels like you're not being validated for how you feel. And then you start to internalize, oh, something's wrong with me because ain't nobody else got these types of problems. And to go back to your initial question, like those are some things that men internalize. It goes back to like, well, I ain't never seen anybody else have these problems, so there's something wrong with me, right? I've never heard another man talk about them being depressed or sad that all these people are dying around him and he's unable to function. Ain't nobody talk. No one said those things to me. So how would I know what this was?
Were you at a point where you felt like you can communicate it to someone, like your
No,
state?
I don't think I ever did. I think there were people around me that just saw my energy and was like, your energy's been a little low for a little too long. Right. And I have cousins that would come and check up on me, or I had a cousin that was living in DC. I went to go visit for a period of time and just said, hey, what's up? What's going on? And she would be looking out. And that was very helpful. That itself, just somebody checking in on you, makes a world of a difference and it can make you feel not alone, right? But in some instances, like I just wasn't strong enough to pull myself out of it. And sometimes you just don't. It's other people that you need in your life that say, hey, what's up, man? Like, what's going on? Like, just what's going on? And so that you saying, I'm okay, I'm good, that can only go for so long without people being like, nah, you're not good. You're not good. I can look at you and tell you're not good. Your energy is not good, you know. But I attest that to having good relationships with people that hopefully had good. I think had good relationships with me. These are people that are still talking today. So
Uh, those people you said noticed it, right? But if you were to reach out to them or they were to ask to help you at that time versus maybe now, right? Maybe now be different. But let's say going back to that time, comparing it to
Mhm.
now, would you have accepted the help, felt some type of way about it, try to be like guilt, anything?
Like if somebody came to me and asked me, do I need help?
Yeah, like I see, like you said, like you're
If
not right. Like they were saying, like
it
you're not
depends.
good.
If it was positioned in such a way that made me feel less than, I would not be engaging with them. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a pride period, a piece of me too. Is like I don't want a pity party, and I'm not charity. So if you come at me with authenticity and with respect, knowing that you genuinely care about me, and not because you were trying to quote unquote help me be better. You know what I'm saying? If that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, it
and
does.
I think that would I have ever sought them? Hell no. I would have just wallowed in whatever for as long as I probably could have until some shit probably came out like, oh, you failing everything, bro. You about to get kicked out of school. But it was good that those people were around. I think God put people in your path for a reason, especially when you really need them. But to be honest with you, like, yeah, I think it's all about positioning and approach. And I'm a big believer in that. Like the way you kind of step to somebody makes a huge difference. You can be well intentioned, but your approach is totally off, and you will miss the mark on helping that individual. So to me, I think the important piece is just to kind of know those individuals as much as you can. And even if you don't, try to approach it with as much authenticity and not from a place of, hey, I'm your caseworker trying to help you. Because that's not going to go over well. Not with me, anyways. That's just how I operate.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. I could see that. I mean, I'm not a person who's very good describing my emotions and even mental state or anything like that. My wife says it all the time. She's like, you don't say
Yeah.
anything, and
well,
sometimes I don't know.
well, here's the reality. Like,
So
let me ask you this: what were the first
hmm?
initial emotions you were exposed to? Like in terms of like when people said, "Hey, are you feeling fill in the blank?"
So I'll be real with you. I don't that wasn't a question I was accustomed to ever getting. Like
Okay. Well, if
growing
you
up.
were,
It just wasn't.
what about when you explained something as a child or as you grew up? When you said, "I feel," what did you say, or did you just not say anything?
So my approach then is somewhat similar now. I'm slowly trying to break that mold. And the approach is you get the question and I just sit there. And in my head, I'm responding, right? But nothing verbally is coming out.
What are the words you're saying to yourself in your head? What are the words you're using? Specific words.
Sometimes it's like, if only you knew. Sometimes it's I don't got time to worry about this. It really depends on the situation, right? A lot of times it's not comfort, and a lot of times really it's almost like trying to think of the word here. The liberty, essentially. So here's a great example. Is Thunder asked me a year ago, I believe. It was, I think, last summer. She said, "I would just like to know more about you that I don't know." And I said, "Well, what else you want to know, right? We were married for like about to be 10 years. And she said, and she hit me with this. And it was a great question. She said, "I don't know. I've never heard you talk about certain things. Like, I would love to know what you were afraid of." And I was like, "You want to know the answer now?" She was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." And I really did my best to try to answer her question, but not a word came out, because I sat there and then I told her, I said, "I got to think of it." And then she asked me again. And then I told her, I'm like, that's not a question I don't even think I've ever had the liberty to feel the answer. Like, I don't think I've even like pondered that. And so since I've never pondered it, I don't know. Like, I just feel like I'm not in that position to be able to do that. So what I told her, I was like, I have to worry about like you, kids, providing, all those things that like I don't really ever sit back and think those type of questions of like, what am I afraid of? Like, what is bothering me? Oh, something is bothering me. Maybe I should deal with it. Maybe I should talk about it, whatever the case, right? And then I also feel like nobody wants to hear it. Like that's a realization of mine. And I never knew people wanted to hear it or whatever until like, cause this mental health thing for me is like a last 3 or 4 years acceptance of it for myself. I've, see it in my wife and all of that. And I get it and I don't get it at the same time. Right. Well, I was talking to my cousin and I was venting about something because he asked me, and it was like a very minor event. But we were drinking, I think we was having cigars, and he was like, pressing a little bit on it. Not like you said, not like too much, but like he was just, asking some questions. And he's like, "Yo, you're my cousin, like we're very close, and this and that." And I was like, "Okay." And so I opened up, I can't remember about what, but I opened up. And I got home and he texted me and he was like, "Hey, that was a nice conversation. I wish you'd do that more." And I was like, "Why do you want to hear about my problems?" And he's like, "Because I want to hear about your problems and I love you. And it's something that you've never shown me. And I've known you, like my whole life. And this is the first time in our 30s that I've ever heard that from you. And I wish you do it more."
How'd that make you feel?
Very uncomfortable.
Why?
Very uncomfortable. It's very vulnerable. Right? It's not a side I'm familiar with. I'm also the person always hearing, never telling. So to hear that, it was like, okay. But then I said to myself, okay, you got to get out of that, right? Like this, no one's winning this battle. It's not even a battle and I've never seen someone take pride really in this battle. Like, Dwayne does, and we'll get to that. But it's not really like a battle you should take pride in. And so now I say to myself, oh, let me reach out. But it's still very strategic when I do it. It's still very like reserved because I'm like, do I want to bother them about this right now? Is that going to bother their day? They probably got other stuff. They don't want, what if they're having a good time and they're like all this? And then I have to now sit there and go to, and then the thing that's tough is like, now I'm like, okay, I have to tell you. So I have to formulate it. So now I have to digest it, which means I have to understand it, soak it in, think about it. And I think part of it is like is a little strength of mine, which is not a good strength, but it's just to be like, let me disregard it. I'm just gonna forget about it and just not worry about it. And because I don't do that, it's good in a way because like Thunder says to me, she's like, I don't know how you're as strong as you are. And I will say the thing that makes me very surprised to hear, hearing it said to me, but hearing people say it that are men. I've heard this in the last year. I've heard a lot. I've heard it from you. There was like, you're strong, right? And I give you a lot of credit. And it makes me very uncomfortable.
I remember you like froze. You were like,
right.
What? I was like,
it makes me very uncomfortable. And a friend of mine said it to me almost like you did, like face to face, right? Like you was like, listen, look at me. And you was like, this is some real stuff right here. Like, right? And I took it and like you remember, I kind of was like, yeah, thanks. And just boom, transitioned. So, but when my friend did it again recently, someone I grew up with, and he said it like 4 times in a row, like boom. Oh, you didn't hear me. Boom. Oh, you didn't hear me. Boom. Oh, and after the 4th time, I was like, and I was about to like, okay, let's transition to sports or something. And I was like, why do you say that? Right? And I forget what he said or why he said it, but I remember how I felt. And I definitely felt like very appreciative for myself, but also for that person to be a friend of mine. And because that's like, for me, it's one thing to hear it. It's another thing to hear from people you respect. And then you're like, okay. Like someone wants to hear my problems. It's not a negative. Someone saying they like, saying something positive to me, I should accept that. I should, have, as much as I'm going to have strength in disregarding, I should have strength in accepting, gratitude, accepting my mental health. And that's when I really like, not at that moment, but like really was like, okay, I'm not uncomfortable to be like, you should go to therapy. I've done therapy. It's great. Here's why I went to therapy. And so when Thunder told me to start doing therapy, I didn't even hesitate when she was like, oh yeah, my job would offer you to pay for your therapy and you can get like 10 sessions. I was like, all right, I'm scheduling one next week. And so I did. And I went in there and I was just like, I don't have time to waste. I want to uncover these things. And
you going for it now.
I want to talk about that. Yeah. I took it like a work meeting. Like, okay, this is the agenda. This is what we're going to talk about. Right. Yeah. But I also said to her, my family doesn't know what mental health is. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know it exists. All these stigmas. And so I don't know how to deal with it. Like the first time I really, 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 really know I was going through mental health was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I wasn't going through depression. At least I don't think, right? But, and I'll be honest, if I was, that would be my next challenge, just accepting that thought. But I don't think I was going through depression, but I definitely was like, something's not right. Yeah. Like my mind is like consistently working and I can't turn it off. And like, I'm overwhelmed with nothing. Like I was going through a lot in life, right? But at the same time, like when I say overwhelmed with nothing is like it's almost like one drop in my cup. It was overflowing and I would be angry. And I wasn't liking the anger, like more angry than normal. And then I started noticing like the anger became my like, I don't want to say identity, but it definitely was a common feeling I was carrying a lot. Wasn't expressing it, but I was feeling it. Like, oh, this person's calling me. I don't have time to answer that, or this or that or whatever. And I started saying comments of like, once I'm done building my house, I'm shutting my phone off for 6 months and I want to be isolated. I don't want no one to reach out to me. And then I started sitting and thinking, and I was like, this doesn't, I'm not myself. I don't feel like myself. Then I had to like, to me, that was a worse story for myself, because it was like, now I had to remember, like, what was the feeling of myself? Now I have to work to gain back something that I've already identified with. And it's a challenge, right? Because now you're trying to get back to your whole. But like I was someone who knew who I was early. And so I'm now working towards that. It's great to like have people like you who just genuinely reach out. I remember like you reached out to me when I first had Avery, and you was like, hey, I'm calling you Happy Father's Day. And I was like, whoa. And he was like, talk to me for 15 minutes. And he was like, all right, I gotta let you go. I gotta call other fathers like that. Because men don't get that gratitude and recognition, right? And so it's a challenge, right? Like mental health is a challenge. It's definitely more of a challenge as a man, and it's definitely more of a challenge, I would say, for me as a man, where I don't want to push it to my kids. Because you mentioned that. You said like you want to teach your kids differently than you. And so like Avery, for an example, like he cries. I don't ever say, suck it up, you're a man. But I hear people say sometimes, and I'm like, oh, don't say that. You know, like I value that you can understand those feelings and express them. And so I asked him, how you feeling and all that. But I am still not good at teaching him how to express it, because I don't know how to express it. And then I also, again, the second part is I'm not even still brave enough to express it.
Hey, listen, man, we're all still learning and growing in all this, right? Like no one's going to be perfect. I always say I value progress over perfection. And as long as we're moving directionally accurate in the right direction, then we're good to go. I want to unpack some of the things that you just said, right? And hence the reason I want to go back to why I was asking you about what are the words you were using in your mind when you were telling yourself about how you felt, and you were unable to kind of verbalize that verbally, like in word, but also even in your mind. And that's one of the things that we need to conquer as men, is being able to name and help our children name the emotion. Because the vocabulary that I had as a child was very minimal, right? I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm angry, I'm happy. Those are the emotions that we initially learn in school. But for some odd reason, those emotions and the variation of them seem limited all the way up until like adulthood. And so the entire time, the only emotions that we're exposed to and feeling is sad, mad, angry, happy, whatever. But there's nuance between those emotions in between, I believe. And so I think one of the things that we can continue to do just as men is just name what is it that we are dealing with, and then we can conquer it, right? We can then attack it in such a way, because it's like know thy enemy. Like you have to know, and I'm not saying every emotion is an enemy, but you have to know what you are dealing with to then be able to say, okay, how do I formulate a solution? How do I figure out how to move forward? And I think that's also part of opening up and sharing with your friends organically, right? And it shouldn't be something that you feel pressure to do, but just saying like how you feel. And it's great that your cousin said, I wish we have more conversations like this. I like that. After all these years, this is your family, man, right? After all these years, we're finally getting to some of the meat and potatoes of who you are. And so think about the relationship that you could have had with him, if you would have expressed how you felt throughout the years, right? Think about the growth that our children or our friends missed out on by simply telling us how they felt in the moment and advice we could have given them or they could have sought out from someone else. It's like we're limiting our growth. So I love the fact that you were like, man, when I get these therapy sessions, I want to tackle this, I want to tackle this, I want to tackle this. That's the attitude we should be having when we're like 5, 6, 7 years old, right? Even older, as we continue to, deal with our emotions, understand them a little bit, become more mature, because that's where the growth happens, man. Not when we're, in a corner, in a shelter, in some dark corner, or trying to escape everything. I mean, trust me, I know this from my own experience as well. I think the biggest growth that I've had is when I'm being the most vulnerable with my wife, when I'm learning something about myself. Because I, like you, my wife has asked me questions like, shit, ain't nobody ever asked me that. And hell, I never asked myself that. And so there have been moments where I've definitely, like, we've had like I'm crying because I'm like, I don't even know why I'm crying. Like, I don't know. But it's like there's something in which I am saying, or in which my wife is looking at me, or how she's looking at me, or how my emotions are coming across, like when I'm explaining it, or it's going back into a memory, right? And remembering what I'm talking about or what I'm saying. Um, because ain't nobody ever asked me that. And so that's what makes, I think, relationships very significant and meaningful. And I, like you, have a strong relationship with you because I feel like we bounce ideas off of each other, but also we're genuine with each other. So it doesn't feel forced or like I'm hearing your problems. And I don't want you to think of it like your problems. This is just life, bro. I don't think that they're problems. I think they're opportunities. That's what they are. That's my glass half full
Mhm.
mentality. But they're opportunities for us to learn something. They're not problems because I may be able to learn something from the opportunity that you got going on in your life. That's an opportunity. So I think it's also the way we think about what's going on in our lives that make the difference, right? And how we feel about ourselves, but also how we perceive our relationships with other people, and then also the world. When I say the world, I don't mean a blanket like, hey, what's going on in in Europe. I mean like how we see the world or experience it through our eyes in terms of everything that we are digesting is going to be different based on the emotions that we've dealt with, in our past experiences. And anyway, so I'm going on a tangent, but I want to just say, like, I appreciate you sharing that because, like, it helps me kind of want to reiterate the importance to my wife, but also my son, who's 4, but he's learning the importance of naming the emotion. Let's call it out. Let's not just sweep it under the rug. I'm not going to give you a pat on the back and say just suck it up. There are moments when I do want to say that, absolutely, right? And there are some instances where it is meant for that. Like, hey, like we talked about this 3 times. You just cried. This is the 4th time you cried today. You're just crying to cry. But in some other instances, it's not that. It's something else that's wrong, and we need to get to the grassroots of what the problem is, as opposed to just kind of sweeping it under the rug and being like, "Hey, I dealt with this. You can deal with it too. You be all right." Like that's just not it.
That last statement, I've dealt with this, you can do better, right? I mean, I think, again, I think that's like just a lot of men in
Mm-hmm.
general. Like someone's going through something and you're like, bro,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That's not even a big deal because I did that. Right. And it's like, okay, does it mitigate the
No,
struggle? You know?
we're not all built the same. You know what I'm saying? We're not all built the
Yeah.
same. So,
Yeah, but it's different. It's like it's just different perspective. Like that definitely's got my outlook
mhm.
different. It changed my goals from that point. Once I was like, again, something's not right. Like for me to know my mind is constantly working and asking myself for isolation is something that's
Yeah.
not normal for someone who's an extrovert. For someone to be in isolation and ask of isolation, but you're in it and not
You're an
realize it,
extrovert.
right? I was like, what? So, but like even those, it's like that's just not normal. Like you're alone in your room, going, I need to be alone in a room.
Yeah.
Well, you are, right? So like that, those are things where I'm like, okay, so I check in. I check in on my kids. I check, so I've always checked in on my
Mhm.
friends. But sometimes I check in a little different, and be like, yo, you good? You good?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, and so you're trying to go get a drink, like, and you try to go in more of a comfortable environment, whatever the case. And I even propose different solutions than the past. I don't know, you probably do, but like like I said, I propose therapy a
Mhm.
lot. Like, hey man, it's not a bad thing. It's good. I do it. I would keep doing it, but my therapist, was like, you're in the place you don't kind of really need
Mhm.
it. And so I was like, okay. But I still will go again every so often, right? Just to be like, here's my take it like a physical.
I
Here's my
know.
annual checkup.
Meanwhile, you start getting on the
So
couch and being like, "Hey, are you good? Is you all right? I've been coming often, but you haven't been seeing like the same type of person." But but it's
yeah.
good, man. It's just good conversation to have. I think it's like a routine maintenance check, right? Like you do your car every couple of months. You just want to check in with somebody just to make sure that everything is working right.
Do you do anything to like help with your mental health now?
Yeah, I like to go on walks. So, I've been talking to you about my walks. I get up early in the morning, and lately it's been a little bit later, around 5:36. But to some people, I know that's a little early, but I'll
5:36
in
in
the
the
morning,
morning.
yes.
Yeah.
And I'll take a good, 5 mile walk, probably 2.5 mile one way, another 2.5 mile back. On weekends, I'll probably like to do a longer walk. Because it's a good reflection time, man. And like where I live, I'm in California. The weather's pretty decent here. There's no snow going on, so you can pretty walk for a long period of time. And it's like the topography is super majestic looking because it's a lot of, like nice mountains and stuff, and the ocean, and so it's nice. And I think that it's also just it's a good way for me to check in with myself. Not only to just listen to some music, I'll listen to some news too, but then I'll play back in my mind what happened maybe the day before, something that I needed to follow up with. But I just feel like I'm a lot sharper that way too, because you take some time for yourself as opposed to getting up and going and then just going into your day. Like if you take the time for yourself, I don't care if it's just like 5 minutes or 55 minutes, right? Take the moment, take the time to just reflect. Because that's one of my biggest goals for this year in general, because I want it to be part of just my lifestyle. But for the goal, at least for short term, it's a goal this year to do more of reflection. I don't care if it's writing in a journal, talking to myself, listening to music, going on a walk, riding a bike, playing basketball, or you're watching a basketball game. Whatever it is that you like to do, take a moment for yourself. And then in that moment, try to do some reflection. And some of my biggest learnings, I think, happen in that reflection, even without me knowing it subconsciously. Sometimes you're just playing things back in your mind and you're reflecting, and ask yourself questions. I think that's
Yeah.
the biggest things for me is, some people are like, what are you, a therapist? I'm like, no, I'm not a therapist. I'm just curious. I have a curiosity like nobody's business. I just want to know. I'm not being nosy. I literally sometimes I want to know because I selfishly want to be better. And I'm only going to be better if I ask other people questions. And if depending on what they say, I'm learning, regardless of actually what they say, I'm learning, right? I'm learning a little bit about them, but in turn, I'm learning about myself. So it's like you take pieces and who you are today, right, is a combination of all the people that you've kind of engaged with. But they also say the who you are today is also a combination of the 5 or 4 most common people you hang out with most often. I think that's very true. But I think that the core of who you are in terms of your foundation is a combination of all the things that you've experienced in life, not necessarily just the people that you engage with today. And I think those are the moments that the leading with curiosity and having questions. Um, I've learned a lot about myself, and also I think I've become a lot better, stronger, smarter, faster, because people that I speak to are a lot smarter than me. You being one of them as well, in many things. And so the more I speak to you, the smarter I'm getting. So that works. That worked for me. That's my superpower, baby. I steal other people's powers. you know?
That is a power. Yeah, that walking thing, I heard you say it's a goal of yours. I definitely changed some goals for me. You're curious. I'm very, for some reason, obsessed with growth. Um growth, like I've noticed the older I gotten, the more obsessed I have with growth. It's kind of, I don't know if it's getting healthy, but even I'm wondering like, what is this obsession? But I'm obsessed with growth, like personal growth. I used to set a lot of my goals every year, right? Like you would say stuff like you said, like you was like, oh, every year I analyze my bills, which one can go. And I'm like, wow, right? I'm gonna do that. And then it was like, I do a vision board. It's like, damn, I don't do that. And then it was like this, that, and the third. So, but I did goals, right? But my goals were always like small, or they was not fully developed. And then as I got older, they got more grand. And then it started trending more and more in career and less personal. And then once I started going through like, some of those challenges, I was like, it was last year actually, I was like, I only have one goal for the year and it's self-care. And that was it.
Love it.
No other goal. Didn't even write it down. It's like, don't need to write this down, right? Like part of my self-care was that, like not writing it down, not making it feel like a task to accomplish. But it was very foreign. It was like, hey, Thunder, I'm trying to do self-care. She's like, that's awesome. And I was like, how do I do that? Because I only know it as one way as a man. It's just go to the gym.
That's all we know.
I don't know.
Go to the gym.
I was like, I'm exercise. And she's like, what else? And I was like, what do you mean, what else? What else is there? I'm not going to go get my nails done all the time or whatever. And then that's when she was like, no, like you can do skincare and you can do this. And I was like, yeah. And so talking to you and you're like, you got to take care of yourself, man. You got to get yourself stuff if you know you can. And I was like, yes, I'm going to get me my own soap. So like, I got soap, I got pajamas, I got like small things, man, right? I do skincare and like all those little things. I would do it with my wife, but I did it because my wife wanted to do it. Now I'm like doing it myself, right? And I even self-care in a way of like setting a boundary of like, look, man, I know you're going through a hard time right now. And I always was the type to like want to help people, but I'm like, I can't help you right now. Like just for my being, like, I need to put a boundary. And it can sound sometimes like messed up, but it's like the plain analogy. Like I got to put my mask on.
Yeah, I don't think it's messed up.
I can't help you.
Love it.
Yeah, but it feels it. And so part of my self-care was even that, just putting a little boundary. And won't lie, like, Thunder's going through a tough time at one point, and I was like, I'm here for you, but like I can't be full in on this with you right now. Because like I'm still like, I told her, I was like, I'm still getting myself out of it. I just can't get back in it. And she was like, no, I like that. I'm happy for you. I wish I could do the same. And so like, it's my whole goals have changed and all of that because of that. And again, when I talk to you, just small stuff like you said, like you go for your walks at 5 a.m. I'm like, well, oh yeah, that's cool. I go to the gym at like 5 a.m, right? But it's still like interesting to be like, why do you go for walks? Because I go to the gym for this goal, and your walking is an entirely different goal than why I go to the gym, right? And your like outcome from it is different, and what it does for you is different. But it's just good because it's a different avenue of conversation. I get to bounce off of you and then get to learn from you as well, and then take that and then apply it to someone else. And then when I talk to him, like, oh, my boy Greg goes for walks at 5 a.m. Why don't you go for walks? Like you say, you don't have time. Maybe you just need to get up at 5 a.m. or something, right? Like you have the time. Like it's sometimes like, nope, just got to go to work, and that's it.
No, it's good. And I love that, man. Like, do it all, man. That's why your skin is glowing right now. I see it, But you got to do all the skincare stuff, man. Whatever it is that works, that makes you happy, you got to do it, because who else is going to do it for you but yourself, man? And that's great that your wife is supportive. And that means y'all are doing good. And I love that. I love that. We need to do more of that. And we got to talk more about this. And I appreciate the conversation too, because I think it's just an opportunity to really sit back and say to yourself, like, okay, man, what do I want out of life? Right. And not to get all altruistic on anybody here. I'm not trying to go all philosophical, but like, that's just like, what do you want out of life? And if there are things that really mean the most to you, right, in terms of just self-care, and that's right now your only one goal, then freaking do it. Go hard on that. Because, when else are you going to find an opportunity to do it? So I love that.
I want to do one thing. I do want to transition to, because we've said some good points, right? But I wanted to transition to the Dwayne thing. Yeah. And the reason I want to transition is because his first comment, again, I saw it and I was like, man, this is so valid in so many areas. Yeah. Right. And then his next statement was just like, what? Like it's like you just disregarded your first statement. Yeah. And he was like, he said in like, I think within like 5 minutes after that interview, he was saying, men don't need gratitude. No, I'm sorry. He says men don't need all those like other things that we've discussed, basically. He was saying men need gratitude and they need gratitude from the people men are carrying burdens for.
Mm.
I would love to know your point of view on that.
So I'll address it in two ways. So I think that the first comment is, yes, I agree, men do need gratitude, but they also need all the things that he initially mentioned, right? So, and I think it depends on the stage and where you are in your life. I think because I've done the work, and I think a lot of people have done the work, especially like as you get married, you're in a relationship, you've had a lot of growth, you have a sense of self and understanding, and you're able to vocalize exactly your feelings and how you feel. Now that you're there, right? Everything that you do moving forward outside of yourself, you still want to feel appreciated for it, right? And so, like anybody does, like, like the reality is, I don't care who you are, 9 times out of 10, it feels good for somebody to do a good job, and not necessarily a good job, a good job for what? Like, let's be specific. But you don't want to feel like you're doing everything in vain or it goes unrecognized. I think one of the best things that you can do for a man is pick him up, right? Stroke my ego. I want to be stroked. No pun intended. But stroke my stroke my ego. You know what I'm saying? Like stroke it all day long, because that will make me
This is going crazy.
stroke me all, because that will hype me up, because that's gonna make me feel like, oh, yes. Yeah, like, are you the man? You doing it. Oh, yes. Hit it. Like, yes, do that all day long, because I'm a prideful human being. I know that. I have pride about myself, but I know that about me. Now, am I so prideful that I'm ignorant to the insights and perspectives of other people? No. But I am prideful when it comes to me and my wife and my relationship. I want her to appreciate me. I want my sons to appreciate me, right? All the things that I do, because everything that we do is not necessarily done in vain or without sacrifice, right? We do sacrifice some parts of ourselves. Some may not think it is a sacrifice because it is simply part of the role that you were playing and when you signed up for being a dad and a husband. But in some instances, I didn't have to do this, right? I choose to do this because it is part of who I am. It is part of being a man, and part of being myself and being a provider. But it would feel good. It does feel good when somebody says, thank you. I appreciate you. You didn't have to do this. We are grateful, right? It doesn't have to, you don't have to bow down and kiss my feet and do all this stuff, but a little, I see you. That feels good. That goes a long way. Everybody wants to feel seen. I don't want to ever feel taken for granted. Same thing with my wife. I'm sure she doesn't want to feel taken for granted, but I think in particularly men, right? Because I think sometimes our kind of groups that we coincide within, like the guys that we hang around, and we're not going around appreciating each other. It's talking about, hey, I appreciate you, man. Like, I'm saying, I appreciate, say all the things because we're not really going around doing things for other men, but we are doing things for, our families on a regular basis, right? For our wives on a regular basis. And we want to feel appreciated. I mean, everybody does, because we want to feel seen. Even when, like, let me tell you something. I laugh at it too, but even when my wife walks past me sometimes and she'll just, smack my butt real quick, I'll be like, oh, I see you. She's like, oh, look at this at me. I'm like, yeah, I know, mama. Because you want to feel seen. I want to feel desired. Everyone wants to feel that way. I don't know anybody in a relationship that's feeling like, nah, man, that's me. Well, no. Say all the nice things to me. That is like, I'm a big acts of service guy. Cook me a meal, you know what I'm saying? A really good, wholesome, straight up, you put your foot in it and type meal and say all the greatest things to me, and I will give you the world. Done and done. That's all I need. I don't need a lot. I don't need a lot.
I want to get your thoughts on this part.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying, all that, and how there's the tandem, like you said, like for the gratitude and the additional earlier stuff.
Mm.
To the earlier stuff, one reason Dwayne said men need gratitude and not that, it creates weaker men. And we don't need more weak men in today's society. Now, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it still coincides with my response. It depends on what stage you are in your life. I think you need all those things that he mentioned as we are growing up. You need somebody to kind of talk to you about your feelings and vocalize those things. Those are important today as you get old. Like the the example that I shared with you when I was in college, I don't consider myself as being a man. I was a young but young man maybe, but I wasn't a full grown man to where I understood the world the way I understand it today and based on the responsibilities that I have. You understand what I'm saying? Now, because I know who I am in the position that I have in the relationship that I am in, I feel more solid to kind of just vocalize how I'm feeling and what's going on. I don't necessarily need to be codified or spoken to in such a way that is gentle, not gentle, but like in which I feel like my professor and my cousin came to me and it's like, oh, just tell me what's wrong. Tell me. No, I can tell my wife now what's wrong. Like I can simply vocalize and say, here's what's going on with me. You know, here's what I got going on. I need to take a walk. I got to manage my mental health. I'm in charge of my own happiness and I'm in charge of my own well-being. That's right. Do I want my wife to care for me and check up on me? Yes, absolutely. But I myself am responsible for my well-being. Like as soon as I brought children into this world, I am no longer the number one priority. My children are, my wife is actually, then my children, and then myself, because that is who I am. But that doesn't mean that I negate to take care of me. Does that make sense? So I think that in the statement and saying, you know, sitting around and talking about my feelings all the time, probably not where I need to be, right? That can suck in me probably a little bit too much. And also because I know where I stand because I've done the work. But I think that, you know, the men that have not done the work, I don't necessarily think that that makes them weaker men. It just makes them in a different place than some other men may be. And that's okay. That's okay. You know, and then later on, you may find yourself at a place to say, oh, I don't need any of this stuff. I'm good. But does it make you necessarily a weaker man? I don't agree with that. It just makes you in a different place than another man is. That's okay. That's okay.
What popped up in my head was Superman. Oddly. So Superman popped in my head and I was like, you know, it's draining to be Superman all the time. Superman doesn't want to be Superman all the time. There's a reason why he's Clark Kent on the side, right? It's tough to constantly be Superman. It's tough, like to just always have to be that. And because maybe you're not truly Superman. You're, again, that's that beginning of the interview. I asked you, like, who are you as a person? Who are you as a man? So I was like, yeah, I want to be tough. Yeah, I'm probably naturally more tough than some people in some areas, not even realizing it, right? Like my threshold may be higher or lower. It's different for sure, but it's draining to just always feel like you have to be that, like always feel like you have to just be the man. And it's like, you don't, like, you can just be you could be chill, like, and all those things. So again, as soon as he said, I was like, Superman don't want to be Superman all the time. Like, again, this has nothing to do with kryptonite. There's a reason he's Clark Kent. There's a reason he says, let me be one of an everyday civilian. I just want to blend in sometimes.
That's valid. I can see that. I can totally understand that perspective. No, and I agree with it as well. Yeah, we all want to take a break. And I think it coincides with just being honest with yourself. And if it also takes too much energy out of you to be Superman all the time, yeah, take a break. You know, you're not quitting. You just want to take a break. I'm all for that. I'm all for it.
Yeah, part of that, like strong network stuff, and then like prioritizing self-care, just being around guys, just like all that talking, right? That's also one of the reasons why I stopped pushing for like guys trips. Like, I know you've messaged me about, you know, doing one, and obviously we can't do it because we're having twins, but it's super valuable where I'm like, hey, let's just simple stuff like I see the difference between men and women, and that pushed me to do the guys like poker nights on once a month or whatever. Because like my wife was like staging brunches once a month, and her circle grew so organically, so naturally, right? Like as far as like the organic, quickly, and it was amazing. And on top of it, it was like simple stuff they would do. And it would last for hours and she'll come back so refreshed. And I was like, why is it so hard for me to get like 5 guys together to do something simplistic?
Yeah.
Like I can get them to go to the bar, but even then that's still like an issue.
Yeah.
Oh, let's do a guys thing. That was an issue. But what I noticed is when I did do the guy stuff, it was that we did like when I did my last guys trip, and I don't know about any of yours, but we was gonna go whitewater rafting. We woke up, it was cold in Maine. It was raining heavy, and it was like, oh, we're about to be out in that for like 6 hours, and it was like 6 a.m. And we all just looked at each other and was like, yo, trying to play some beer pong. And we played beer pong at like 7 in the morning, right? And we was doing like, typical guy, like, I gotta do 25 push-ups and all this stuff, right? And this whole thing's been great, man. This episode, I feel like we've got like the best content I've gotten in a while. And so I really like appreciate you jumping on here. I definitely need you to come back on here again because you have some other good, strong topics I want to talk about, like, strengthening partnership in your marriage / with your partner. And you've mentioned a couple other things, and I think those are also super good topics I would like to dive in. So if you are willing to come back, I want you to come back. And then also because I need you to announce your run for mayor.
Here, man.
This is a good platform.
But let me, because I'm not running for mayor, so get on me. But I'm always honored, man. It's always a pleasure connecting with you and talking to you, brothers. Like, it doesn't matter what time of day it is or when it is. We're always good to chop it up, because it's always been good. I'll leave you with this, and I'll leave anybody who's listening with this. When you decide to not change, you're choosing, right? So if you know something is going on in your life, whether it's impacting you, bothering you, if you're just complaining about it, or if you're ignoring it, you're choosing it. That's it. That's all I got.
That's probably the best outro I've had yet. I'm going to run with that.
That's it. All right, baby. Daddy's out.
All right.